Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
I love to deal with people who are doing exciting things, and we have people in medical, we have entertainment, we have lots of things. But I found Richard SCHAFFER, who's a certified BEMER partner, that's BEMER, of the BEMER Group USA, and he really is doing something that's very helpful. And so I'm going to let him explain this to you. So if you meet someone on an elevator and they say, "What do you do?" what would you tell them, Richard?
It's sometimes a broad question. I think the first thing that I often do is try to get a little bit of idea who my audience is, who we're speaking to. But I think universally, people have concern about their health. The very evolution of how this occurred to me was unfortunately, my father died a couple of years ago. And, that was really quite of a watershed moment for me. As men, we're unfortunately often in denial about our health. And something like that happens, the loss of somebody close to you, and you get in touch with your own mortality very quickly. And shortly after that, my mom's health started to deteriorate. And I think I was kind of freaking out a little bit, to be fair. And so I was very, very open to try to seek out things that I thought could be helpful to her. So I would say the most quick response I typically get is helping people to actually genuinely improve the quality of their life. You can think it's a age-old expression we've all heard, but life is in the blood. So how your blood goes is often how your life is going to go. So we find that if we can fundamentally improve and significantly increase circulation and blood flow, your body can do some pretty extraordinary things on its own. So we are very responsible about how we represent it. We don't make disease-specific claims, nor would we. But the fact of the matter is there isn't a cell, and a tissue or an organ in your body that would not significantly benefit and respond from increased oxygen, nutrients, and being able to dispose waste matter. Because so many issues that people are plagued with the origin of is something to do with inadequate circulation and other circulatory level issues that cause them a lot of problems.
That's a very good point. And in my capacity as a gerontologist, I wrote a book called Live to Be 100 Plus. And when I wrote it in 1992, Richard, people were living to maybe, I said to 100 plus, but 80 was pretty good. But now we're getting people in their 90s. We have doctors who are operating on them at 95 and 96. So you're doing something very good.
Thank you. Well, we feel the same way. And it was, I can't say in all humility that I would have been as probably willing to gravitate to something like this 10 or 20 years ago. But you get older, you have a child, you lose a parent, and you start thinking a little bit more about legacy and contribution and significance. And I'd lost the passion for the industry I was in for so long. And this was really a welcomed experience. And you come to that conclusion that as people get older, truthfully, the only thing that they truly, genuinely care about more than money is their health. And being able to provide a solution in this day and age where there's just such an onslaught of pushing for drugs and other things, I think people really are open to finding ways that they can have more of an integrated and holistic sort of medical approach.
And so many times, things that are good for people, they require prescription drugs. They have to have an operation. They have to have all these things. And so what is your tell us about the BEMER.
Well, it's a pretty interesting device that was actually originally developed in Germany. The company's actually in 43 countries, although most people in America wouldn't necessarily know that because it's not a household name. If you say BEMER, they think you're talking about a car, right? And so we find a lot of that. But the interesting evolution of it was that the discovery that led to the technology we've developed actually came about in the early 70s. Up until that time, believe it or not, we were actually under the impression that all the blood that pumps your body was circulated because of your heart. Seems like a logical conclusion, but it's a little like assuming the earth is flat. The truth of the matter is that only a quarter of all the blood that actually circulates through your system is pumped physically from your heart. The other 3/4 of all that blood is from your microcirculatory system. So it's a very uniquely, somewhat autonomous system that actually provides the blood flow to microvessels and capillaries that feed your cells and your tissue. Pretty important stuff when you have 100 trillion cells. So the only way that they get the necessary oxygen and nutrients they need, and therefore disposing of waste matter, it sounds a little crude, but you basically have 100 trillion cells that poop every day. And without adequate ability to be able to dispense that toxicity, it creates a lot of problems in the human body. So many years ago, when this was discovered in Germany at the Microcirculation Institute, they discovered there is this unique secondary system, but didn't really have the ability to know how to be able to manipulate or improve it at that time. So there was a couple of scientists from Harvard that actually discovered this system initially, and it sat for about 15, 16 years until eventually they won the Nobel Prize for it, and it became something that was a little bit more known. But even at that moment, there wasn't the technology to figure out how to be able to improve it in a significant level. So the original device actually improved that overall blood flow state for maybe 60 to 90 minutes, not very long, right? The second generation was about 4 hours. But now under the current iteration, it's 12 to 16 hours of kind of an optimum residual benefit. And so we find that people being able to use this device, it's almost like a mat that you laid out on 8 minutes twice a day, and you can significantly improve that part of your circulatory system. So much so that one of the great analogies that I think helps people understand it is that the average person's heart beats about 60 times a minute, let's say. And that's pretty consistent throughout your life, give or take. But imagine if your heart beat 60 times a minute in your 20s, and by the time you got to your 60s and beyond, it was only 20 times a minute. Imagine how that would affect your body. Well, thankfully, that doesn't happen to your primary, your macro circulatory system that your heart is responsible for. But unfortunately, it does happen to this secondary system. So the efficiency of it actually reduces by up to 2/3. So basically, the portion of your blood flow that provides circulation to 3/4 of all the portions of your body, all your circulatory system, reduces its efficacy by up to 2/3 over that same window of time, which means your cells and tissue that are being fed are obviously being inadequately nourished. And of course, we're going to have lethargy, and we're going to have heart problems sleeping, and countless other things that are going to come from poor function and poor cellular function. So we can actually improve that by up to 1/3, which is sort of the physiological equivalent of somebody feeling 10, 15, 20 years younger because of the energy that comes from being able to have adequate nourishment and oxygen and so forth to those cells.
So let me give people some information. If you would like to hear more from Richard, you can reach him at his phone number, which is 561-394-9300. That's 561-394-9300. Or you can go to his website, which is isn.bemergroup. That's BEMER group.com. isn.bemergroup.com. And the exciting part is he will be a participant at the Boomer Expo coming up on July 25th over at Seminole Casino. And you'll be able to see the mat that you're talking about. So there's no pain. This mat, you will have it there?
Yes, we will have a couple of there. And in fact, there's 4 different unique sort of applicators to this device. The first is the primary mat. It's foldable. It's something that's portable, if you will. This is designed to be an at-home use product, which is quite extraordinary. So although we do introduce it through a lot of practitioners because they have certainly the audience and the credibility, but it is meant to and designed to be a at-home use product. So literally it's something that could be laid out on a bed, a couch, a lounge of some sort, and literally 8 minutes twice a day, they'll receive a significant benefit from it. There's also an applicator that's designed more for muscle and organs, one that's designed for deep tissue, joints and bone, and one that's dermatological for skin and so forth. So it's the ability to deliver this unique signal, which, by the way, was mapped from the very signal your brain gives off to help stimulate this process. And there's some pretty brilliant people around the world that have studied this. But needless to say, when you have the ability that you can actually replicate that, needless to say, it's something that you can patent and own and nobody else can have it. So we've had enormous success. We probably have roughly 4,000 clinicians, practitioners, and universities around the world using it. They utilize it even in ambulances throughout Europe for people who just had a heart attack and stroke, and even neonatal intensive care units in Germany. So this is a very, very widely researched and commonly accepted technology around the world. But really, we didn't have a significant presence in the U.S. Until about 2 years ago, when we were very, very fortunate to be approached by NASA to develop a joint venture, a collaboration with them to develop a capacity to integrate this in the next generation of undergarments for spacesuits. So we're very, fortunate that we've had these kind of opportunities, and it's just not very often that you have a chance to introduce such an extraordinary proven technology to, the largest consumer market in the world.
Well, you are so articulate. It's funny, I got on your website, and it was great, but I'm so glad I'm talking to you because you make it sound so alive and so great. I'm so happy that you found this. For whatever reason you did it. It sounds like you're it, and I'm very happy to have you on the radio show. So tell us, when we're on this, what does it feel like?
That's the number one question we get. I would say, first and foremost, responsibly, I don't tell the average person necessarily anticipate an immediate physical experience. And the reason for that is, number one, we're using a very, very low intensity because their body's not familiar to it, so that's just prudent. But the other part of it is that the portion of your circulation that we're improving, this microcirculatory system, doesn't have any nerve receptors. And just to give it some context, some of these blood vessels are 6 or 8 times thinner than the hair on your head. So the average person doesn't feel the blood that's pumping through their body now. In fact, they can probably even find their pulse unless they know where to look, right? So these microvessels are extremely small. So there wouldn't be a way to have a physical experience that is actually being improved. But nonetheless, it's a little like a lot of things. It's the benefit you receive as a result of experiencing this particular signal. So a good analogy would be that, many of us, of course, myself probably included, that no matter whether we try or not, we aren't in the same physical shape we were years ago, where we might gain 5, 10, 20 pounds. And that took years to do. So even if you spent the entire weekend at the gym, you're not necessarily going to lose all 20 pounds tomorrow, right? So it's a little like that. It's that we have become a society where we're conditioned to want an immediate impact. The challenge is anything that gives you an immediate impact is unfortunately not going to give you a lasting benefit. In fact, it's the opposite. You're going to get a lot of side effects. One of the things we notice and this is certainly no slam to the traditional industry, but 1 in 3 commercials now are pharmaceutical commercials. So even though we only represent 4.5% of the overall population, we prescribe 81% of the prescription drugs. And we're not that much sicker than everybody else. In fact, many countries, it's actually illegal to market prescription drugs. And again, that's not a slight in the industry. We know that drugs and surgery are very needed, and they're an important part of our system. But it doesn't mean it has to be the first option. There are a lot of ways in which we can help the body to heal itself. And so that's why we're very responsible about the claims and representations we make, because we're a Class 1 medically registered device with the FDA, so it means it's safe. It certainly can't harm anybody. We're in the process of completing the final stages of our Class 2 FDA clearance, which then gives us the latitude to make a lot more specific representations as far as what it does. But as far as the physical experience, it doesn't give off heat or vibration. It doesn't work that way. It actually is a very, very subtle signal that's actually, if you will, speaking to this part of your system that helps trigger that circulatory process. But what you do feel is the results of that process. You don't see electricity. You don't see the wind, but you can certainly see the effects of it. And your body is very, very much the same way.
Yeah, I was just going to say that was very well said. So what does BEMER stand for? Does it stand for something?
Yeah, it's good that you
Probably
asked
a big, long word, right?
It is, yeah. It's bioelectromagnetic energy regulation.
Well, that's not so big.
Yeah. Say it 3 times fast, it'd be a little tricky, probably.
Well, that's good. So BEMER, so it has it really describes what the product is.
Absolutely.
So this wonderful that you must, here, you sound like you could almost do anything, but you like this so much. I'm sure you have seen people feel better when you've helped them.
Well, the truth of the matter is it started with me. I began this process with no professional intent. I was on a fact-finding mission for my mom, as I mentioned, and, that's pretty dear to probably every child. And my mother and I were very close, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I, feel I'm a pretty knowledgeable person, and I went into it probably with not the best attitude. I probably thought I was going to try to prove it couldn't work. And maybe not the most diplomatic thing to say, but it's very honest. And so those people that have a natural skepticism, I'm probably the king of the skeptic society. But I was open-minded enough because I was anxious and I wanted something that could help my mom. So I spent about 3.5 months going to medical symposiums and academies, speaking to countless practitioners. I researched the FDA documents, the patent documents, the Space Act Agreement, everything there was. Met the owners from Germany, went out to our fulfillment center and office in Southern California before I spoke to a single person. And then I used it for a couple of months. Ran a half dozen marathons, so I, am pretty competitive that way. And I'm very energetic. Those people around me would say that that's already the case. So it'd be subjective for me to say I have more energy. But what I did notice is that I started having a significantly reduced recovery time because, like a lot of guys, I push it a little bit too much sometimes. But I was noticing that things that would normally keep me out of the gym for a week, it was only a matter of a day or two. And then I got my mom using it, got great results. So from there, I became enormously passionate about the opportunity for others.
Well, I'm sure we're going to have you back again sometime. You are just terrific. And I'm just give everybody your phone number again. I think it's really important to do that. And the phone number for you, as we said before, is 561-394-9300. Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Or go to isn.bemergroup.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.